Hey, I can't hear you for some reason. Give me a second. No, doesn't seem to be on my end. I don't know what's going on. Can you hear me? Let me try.
Yeah, sorry, I muted my mic. Yeah, I'm back. So I can hear you.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah,
Nice to see you.
yeah. Yeah, nice to see you too. And good evening, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. And if you're joining me from anywhere around the world, yeah, this is Mary Thankful, Director of Developer Relations at Camunda. And please, can you tell me more about yourself?
Sure. So, like you said, I'm leading the team of developer relations professionals at Camunda. I've been there for about a year now, but I actually have a journalism background, so not much to do with tech. I loved writing. I loved telling stories. Loved featuring other people's stories and answering questions for people. And I actually got into tech through writing press releases for books that were coming out from O'Reilly Media. Got involved just because of my research background. I wanted to know what I was talking about and what the topics meant and how I could better relate to the people that were reading our books. And so I started asking a lot of questions around the lines of what topics do people want to hear? What questions do people have? What information are they interested in? Where are they getting their information? All of those types of things. And kind of because of that, found myself in this community management role, and then technical community management, and that led to developer relations. So it's been a great industry to be a part of. It's been fun to kind of be on the front lines as we learn and grow and figure out how to best serve our technical communities.
Yeah, interesting. So I see this thing called DevRel community. Sorry, DevRel Weekly, a newsletter called DevRel Weekly. So please can you tell me more about it?
Sure. So I once a week gather all of the links and things that I've seen that relate to developer relations or more broadly to community building. And it came out of my desire to have that information, my wishing that resource existed, that it was a place that people could gather information about what was happening. And so that's something that I put together on a weekly basis. I have a couple folks who these days help me kind of sort and sift through all of the links that we get, because we get I think we're over 1,000 links per week these days. That we're sorting through with the various hashtags that we use and RSS feeds that we follow and things like that.
Yeah, I get that. So, please, can you tell me more, elaborate more on developer relations or developer advocacy? Because I see you're an expert in developer advocacy and developer relations. You got me into developer relations and developer advocacy, I think 7 to 8 months ago. So I've been checking your profile, which made me more interested in developer relations and developer advocacy. So please, can you elaborate more, or please can you expatiate like your like can you tell us more about what you know on developer advocacy?
Sure. So the main thing behind developer advocacy is really enabling developers. So it might be enabling developers to contribute to your product if you help out with an open source product. It might be enabling developers to use your product or have a better experience with your product. But we do this through content that we write, through tutorials or workshops that we give, all of these types of things where we're working to make sure that that people have the best experience possible. And one of the biggest pieces of that is that developer advocates are also responsible for getting feedback about the product back to the company.
Yeah.
And so working
Developer
really
feedback.
closely. Yeah, developer feedback, exactly. So they're working really closely with product management, with the engineering teams directly to make sure that they hear, hey, people are having a hard time with this part of the product, or they're really wanting this feature, or someone's looking for this information. Where can they go? Where can they find it? What can we do? And so that's the developer advocacy piece. And more broadly, developer relations is kind of the general term or umbrella term for developer advocacy, as well as community management for technical audiences, as well as developer awareness. And so there's a big piece of it that is just, we need to make sure people know that our products exist, right? So speaking at conferences, writing content, connecting with interesting communities around the world, and saying, hey, we're here, we can solve these problems, here's what we can do, and then here's the content that can help you get started. That last piece is engagement. So really engaging with the community members around the world, making sure that they are engaging with each other if there's interesting conversations that are happening, so that they can make sure that, you know, if someone over here is talking about a new project they just did and someone over here is asking for this thing, connecting those two people, and then engaging people back with the company as well. If there's a blog post that someone could write, or if they'd be a fantastic hire at your company, maybe they have figured out how to fix a bug that engineering's been stressing about, or support isn't able to answer their question. And so
one thing I think about developer advocacy is developer advocates, we try to like give more, we try to give feedback, or maybe if anyone is having a bug or bad issue with your platform or service. For example, if you're trying to like if you have a bad use, or I don't know how I'm going to say it, or like a bug you're experiencing, or a bug using IBM Cloud, for example. So yeah, so one of the things developer advocates do is giving that like a how do I say it, a developer feedback to the engineering team, right? Am I right?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
because I do that alone. I do that a lot. And do developer advocates actually work with the software engineering team of a company?
So in some cases they do. I think the best developer relations teams are working really closely with the product management and the engineers. For us at Camunda, we actually have what we call a weekly stakeholder meeting, where there's a variety of people from around the company who come together to go through that feedback. So we have someone from engineering, we have someone from product, we have a developer advocate, we have someone from support and sales, and people representing all different sides of the company to be able to come together and say, here's what we're hearing, here's what we're going through. Developer advocates often give the perspective of people from our forums, or from GitHub or Twitter, or the engagements that they're having with the community members. And so they bring that feedback to, in this case, that meeting. But in a lot of cases, developer advocates are filing tickets, they're filing bugs, filing issues, and then either trying to fix that issue themselves, if they're able to, or working with the engineering team to get it fixed.
Yeah, so one thing I feel is most developer advocates are lazy. And what do you think about that?
They're lazy?
Yeah, I think most people say that. Yeah, so I think people say that. So I think most developer advocates are lazy from my perspective, basically because moving to the main or core parts of the software engineering system, or yeah, they are trying to skip from the software engineering system and trying to move into developer advocacy. What do you think about that?
So I actually don't think developer advocates are lazy at all. I think it requires far more skills than or a different set of skills than a software engineer does, because a developer advocate is expected to not only be able to code, but also speak, also write, give tutorials in a way that really helps people understand difficult concepts, and then communicate that feedback back internally. So they're an interpreter, they are an educator, they are an entertainer if they're speaking at conferences. They're also a developer and someone who is capable of writing that code.
Oh yeah. But basically, what I see these days is, for example, being a developer advocate at a company that is set already. I think it doesn't give you more stress as a developer advocate. For example, being a developer advocate as a at a company where there are too much developer advocates, or maybe probably like Google, IBM, Facebook, or all that. So I think there might be some developer advocates who are hiding out there and not doing the main thing developer advocates are meant to do. You understand that?
I
Right?
do. I mean, I think that can apply to any job. I don't think it's specific to developer advocates. I think there's always times when people are hiding, as you said, right, and not necessarily doing everything that they could as part of their job. Sometimes that's, people are going through a really rough time. Sometimes that's people are just choosing to skate by and not do more. But I think particularly at bigger companies, it's, I would say in some cases actually more difficult to be a developer advocate, because you really have to balance being there for your community and representing the community as well as representing the company. And the bigger the company gets, the more difficult it is to really do that, because you have to take all of the PR side of things into account, right? So you have to be careful that you're saying the right thing or doing the right thing. And there's far less forgiveness for mistakes than there is at a small startup.
Yeah. I get that. But basically, I myself, I'm a developer advocate. But yeah, I left my company last month or this month. So one of the things I found out is okay, as a developer advocate, I don't write codes like real codes, like compared to what software engineers write. And sometimes developer advocacy in some companies actually requires maybe some stacks, maybe React JS, Vue.js, or GraphQL. Do you think that's right?
So I think I agree. There's a lot of companies where being a developer advocate means a different thing, right? There's some companies where dev advocates are only responsible to speak at conferences. There's some where they only do live streams. There's some where they only write documentation. For me, I see developer advocates as the technical side of developer relations. So I'm expecting someone who has been a developer in the past. I'm expecting them to have that experience and be able to write code. In the instance of my team, my developer advocates are writing everything from proof of concept applications to show what our code or what our products are capable of, all the way to full-blown, Helm charts and things like that, and building out operators to interface with our products that are then maintained by the community. And so, I mean, I've got a principal engineer on my team who codes probably 60% of his time and is very much an engineer and very much still a developer in his day-to-day work, and just happens to also give talks at conferences, give workshops, write content, write tutorials, all of those things that go into making him a developer advocate.
Yeah, I get that. So there is a time when I wanted to join Camunda as a developer advocate, and this thing came up. I think there are two things limiting me for to become a developer advocate, like at a company. For example, number one is my age, and the second one is I think I'm not in some parts of the, like some parts of the world don't require someone like this developer advocacy skill. For example, I think some parts in Asia don't hire developer advocates, and some part, like I'm not in I'm North America now, so I think I applied to be a developer advocate at Camunda. So I received a rejection just because of my region. I'm not in Africa. Sorry, I'm not in North America, so I'm in Africa. So what do you think about that? Like region and age affects
Yeah.
some factors affecting, yeah, that. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think it depends on the company and what their goals are. In the case of the job that you replied for, I was the hiring manager, so I know exactly what the deal was. In that case, we were looking for a developer advocate in North America specifically because we didn't have anyone located there. So we needed someone who knew the North America communities, who interacted with them on a regular basis, who was in those time zones, right? And to me, it didn't matter where they were located in North America, but I needed someone who was in those time zones, in the future, can attend those events easily, already has connections in those communities, things like that. For that same reason, we just hired a German-speaking developer advocate who needed to be either in Germany or Austria or Switzerland, because they would be engaging with those specific communities. So there's sometimes when, developer advocate can be located anywhere, and it's not region specific, it's not programming language specific, it's not anything like that. And there's other times where companies are looking for a different niche and needing to fit those needs. So I think the bigger the developer advocate team gets, you'll look at places like Google or Amazon or Microsoft, where they're looking for a developer advocate with an IoT specialty, or a developer advocate with a machine learning specialty, or things like that. Where as you're growing those teams, you need someone with that specialty or in that region who can really speak to those specific topics. Uh-oh, I think we lost Opemipo.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm
Hey,
sorry about that.
it's okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much you heard of what I was saying.
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
Cool. I'm not sure how much
Yeah.
you heard of,
So
so I didn't know where I should pick back up.
yeah, so I'm here. So basically what do you think about those companies looking for a programming language specific developer advocate? What do you think about that?
I think that's fine. I think there's times when it makes the most sense to have that. For instance, most of our stack is Java these days. And so a good probably 75% of the developers we're working with are Java developers. So that's our primary coding language right now, our primary programming language. And so our first few dev advocates that we hired needed to know Java because they need to know that in order to engage with that audience. These days, it's a little more open. I'm not as concerned about what programming language people know. Yeah. But as we're continuing to grow and figure out, okay, here's our second most used programming language, here's the third most used, then I'm going to be hiring people for those programming languages to make sure that they can engage with those audiences that are using our product.
Yeah. Basically, I think one of the people who have inspired me into like getting into developer advocacy, I think you are the first person. Then I think of Ididion Gasipo, I think of Shedrack Akintayo, I think of Tadmi Bakshi, which is the second person I was meant to mention. I think of John Wauki and some others. So I would like to discuss on how this really means to you, like how this developer advocacy field really means to you, like how it is, like how you've inspired people a lot, like people like me a lot. So how do you think you have done that?
Well, I'm glad that what I put out there is helpful. That's awesome. I think a lot of it, honestly, was just I was in the right place at the right time. I got involved in technical community management fairly early in it catching on with the mainstream. It's been around since the late 80s. But I was interested in it. I got to know some of the other people who were doing similar roles. And then as I learned more, I was wishing that there were more resources out there. And so there was a lot that I started producing and releasing resource-wise that was just what I wish had been there for me. So the podcast that I do, that literally came out of myself and a good friend, Jason Hand, saying we want to learn more. And having a podcast gives us a good excuse to call up these people and say, hey, could you be a guest and come talk about this topic that we both really want to know about? But it also gives us an opportunity to share that and give back to the community. Same with the newsletter, same with my book, right?
Yeah. So I think I read one of your books. I read one of your books, but I think I've forgotten the name, one of them. When I checked
business value of developer relations. Yeah.
So I read it. So I actually subscribed to your newsletter, DevRel Weekly. So I really want to know how you started off that idea and what made you to do it and what you're planning to do about this DevRel Weekly. What you get to do? What's your hope?
Yeah. So honestly, the reason why I started that was because I was running my own consulting agency. And so working with a variety of companies who were interested in developer relations and trying to figure out what to do next. I knew if I wasn't doing developer relations on a day-to-day basis, employed as a community manager or on a DevRel team, that I wouldn't have as much contact with what was going on in the industry. And so I needed a way to keep track of those things. And if I was going to be doing that research, I might as well put it out there for other people as well. It also kept me honest and forced me to actually do that research that I knew that I needed to do to be a better consultant. So it worked well for me. And then it turns out people really enjoyed it and it was a great resource for them. So it's been good. I've enjoyed being able to put that information out there, and I've learned a lot along the way as well.
Yeah, interesting. So I actually followed that a lot, and it's inspired me to do most things. And I actually saw some things online. There is one of them called DevRel CMS. So I actually think you're interested in something like that, or the person handling it, right? Am I correct?
Are you thinking of Orbit?
Yeah, I think you're interested in DevRel. Yeah.
Yeah, so Orbit is... Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think you wanted to say something about it, so it's fine. You can move on.
Mm-hmm. So Orbit is kind of a reimagined CRM, a way to keep track of your customers, your community, who you're engaging with, and things like that. So they have this idea of keeping people in the orbit around you, like a galaxy. And so people who are highly active in your community have a lot of love for your product. And then people who have a good amount of reach, so are engaging with a lot of other people, have a lot of people following them on different platforms or following the work that they're doing, things like that have a lot of reach. And with those two things combined, you can kind of see which orbit they're in, how much gravity they have, right? So how close they are to your product and how many people they can bring with them as well. And they've done a lot of really great things to help visualize.
Before, please, if I might interrupt. So before becoming a developer advocate, what do you have to do before becoming a developer advocate, a more professional developer advocate?
Yeah, so there's a couple things I always recommend. One is building up your speaking skills and your writing skills, so communication side of things. Testing out, let me go speak at a meetup. Let me put a talk together and go speak at a conference or submit a CFP to a conference and see if I can get in. But really building up that public speaking side of things to see if it's something that you enjoy doing. And more importantly, to see if communicating technical topics and breaking those things down for people is something that you're able to do and interested in doing. And the same goes for writing, right? Writing tutorials about how to do something, making sure that you know how to break things down, how to take things step by step, and maybe something that's natural or simple to you might not be as easy for someone else. And so being able to explain and walk people through that process is a really important piece of it. So really kind of digging into some of the things that developer advocates tend to do on a regular basis and saying, you know, do I actually enjoy that, or is it not something I really want to be doing?
Yeah, so I think that's one of the main points. I think the first one is actually the main point. That is working more on your speaking skill, like your public speaking skill. I think that's the main thing before becoming a developer advocate. Exactly, like myself, for someone like me, I never ever like had to have this feeling, or like have a tense feeling before speaking. So I have just this free mind about speaking. The first time I had my first keynote, or the first time I had, or the second time I had my international keynote, I never ever felt like I was like tensed. So I have this straight feeling, and you also need to work on your vocabulary, like your vocabulary development. I think it's really really important for you to learn. And also when writing technical articles, anyone who is saying this should actually write something very descriptive, and something that's going to make you going to make you know how to use a product more. You should have a deep understanding, right?
And it's interesting. There's two quick things there. One is, as someone who has spoken at a lot of conferences and a lot of events these days, sometimes that anxiety, that tension, the nerves before you talk doesn't go away. And that's okay. It's more learning how do I handle that, and how do I turn that energy into, or that nervous energy into excitement that I can take with me onto stage. With writing, I completely agree. It usually requires you to have that deep knowledge of things. I've seen a couple people do really great articles about, like, hey, I'm learning this programming language, or I'm learning about this concept. Let me write about it as I learn it to help other people along the way.
Exactly. And so I think the first time when I started writing my first technical article, that was the future of JavaScript in coding or so. So I still feel ashamed that I'm this person that wrote that article, basically because I didn't write something that's more descriptive about JavaScript, and it's very, 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 very short. So I think it's about 500 words or 300 words. So I think it's very, very, very short, and didn't tell much things about JavaScript. So I think developer advocacy, getting into it is a process. You can't just say this morning, or just wake up and say, I want to become a developer advocate. I think it's a process, right?
I think so. I think there's another piece in there that we talk about fairly often, that it requires certain motivations and skills, like empathy. It requires people who are truly interested in helping others learn and grow, and someone who has the ability to approach difficult situations and be empathetic to people who are involved. And so there's some skills in there that I think some people have a little more, or come to a little more easily than others. And you can work at that, but you have to have that motivation and that desire to really help people and enable developers. I think that goes a long way. But I agree. I think there's a lot of different skills that can be built up over the years. And that, you know, it's not just I decided I want to be a dev advocate today. If you haven't already been speaking and writing and contributing back to code.
So I think there is this one. I think there is one of my friends. We started coding together. So I'm this person that actually moved from being a civil developer to being a more civil developer. And yeah, so he never thought that I'm going to become someone like a developer advocate. So I think
Hey.
yeah, so I moved from being a non civil developer to being a more civil developer. So
Mm-hmm.
he wondered like how I moved into developer advocacy at such I took a break from different social media platforms. For example, I took a break from Facebook, I took a break from Twitter, Instagram, and
Mm-hmm.
all that. So I think
Yeah.
taking a break it's actually a lot. So taking
Mm.
a break and thinking about what to do is a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm speaking at conferences. So most of the conferences nowadays I speak at are invitations, like are from invitations. So
Sure.
this person actually wants to be like me, and I gave him ideas on being to be a developer advocate. I just want being a developer advocate and a more professional developer advocate. I'm not saying I'm a more professional developer advocate, but I think I still have some parts to. I think I still have some parts left. For example, I'm still working on my social presence and all that. So
Mm-hmm.
after telling this person these steps, so I think the person just moved it through it and jumped and just said, I want to be a developer advocate. So I think,
Sure.
do you think that's funny, or what do you think I should do to that type of person? Like, what do you think what do you think I should tell that type of person?
So, I mean, I think someone who has been in the industry for a while already and kind of doing some of those developer advocate like tasks, who has been writing, who has been speaking, and then recognizes, hey, I'm doing a lot of things like a developer advocate. Maybe I'll go try that. I think that's fine. The times when I see people moving over that worry me a little bit is when someone moves directly from being a developer who hasn't had that experience working with the communities or speaking at conferences or meetups or wherever, who goes to be a developer advocate and they are the only developer advocate at their company, because that means they don't have anyone to learn and grow from. So I think that's the time when I'm nervous about it, because I'm worried that that person won't have the mentorship to be able to be successful in the role.
Yeah. I think that's correct. I think that's correct. So I think that's fine. So for today, thanks for taking out your time to
Yeah.
have this session. So lastly, one of the things I would like to ask you about is how do you become a professional developer advocate, or how do you move into developer advocacy?
Sure. So there's a couple things. Looking for roles that are maybe less senior than you are in your developer position is probably the first place to start. And I know that can be a little disappointing sometimes to see yourself go from, senior or principal down to, just a developer advocate without those extra titles on there. But it does require some different skills. And so being aware that that might happen sometimes, and that that's not a step back in your career, you're just stepping sideways into a different career path, right?
Yeah.
But again, I think helping out with open source projects, being a part of communities, writing technical blog posts online, and having things that the company that you're applying to can see ways that you're giving back to the community and involved in the community is really important. And then something that I tell everybody who's applying for any job is make sure you read the job description. And then in your cover letter, even if it's just a paragraph or two, highlight some of the things that are in the job description that you either know you're really good at, or things that you can back up with the content or the interactions that you've had online. Because anytime you can go through and pull specifics out of that job description and highlight it in that cover letter, the hiring manager is going to notice. I can tell you that. And so really being sure to say, you know, hey, you're looking for someone who can reach these particular communities. I've spent my entire career working with those communities, or I've spent the last few years really digging into those communities. This is what I'm passionate about. This is what I want to do. Can go a long way to kind of getting your foot in the door there.
Yeah. So so please, lastly, I'm going to ask you a very funny question. So, and
Sure.
that is, please, can you rate my skill as a developer advocate? Like maybe 1 to 10, like can you rate? Because I'm just looking for a feedback from anyone I know.
Sure. So how would you raise your skill? Is that what you're asking? How would you get better at it?
Yeah, I mean, what on a scale of 1 to 10, like can you give any
Oh, how
like
would I
range or
rate your
number of
skill?
my developer advocate?
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable doing that because I haven't seen enough of your work. So I don't know. I don't know. But I do know that you are very
Yeah.
involved in the communities, and that goes a long way.
Yeah, thank you. So
Yeah.
thanks for taking out your time to
Of course.
be on this show, and thanks for everything they've been doing. Thanks for the inspiration and everything. So hoping to see you next time on my YouTube channel, Tech Talk with Talk Maybe One. I'll be podcast with you. So I think that's fine, right?
Yeah. It's been great. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Thanks so much. So bye.
Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you.